Have you ever been hurt by someone you trusted? Maybe someone close to you treated you unfairly, and it felt impossible to understand why. Today, we are stepping into a powerful story from the Bible, one that speaks directly to those moments. It's the story of Joseph, a young man whose life was turned upside down by betrayal, yet who rose to greatness through faith, patience, and forgiveness. Joseph was one of 12 brothers, the sons of a man named Jacob. But Joseph wasn't just any son. He was his father's favorite. Jacob loved him deeply and showed it openly by giving him a beautiful, colorful coat, a symbol of honor and affection. Now imagine how that made his brothers feel. They were already jealous. But things got worse. Joseph began having dreams, dreams that seemed to suggest something unbelievable, that one day his brothers would bow down to him. And Joseph, perhaps not realizing how it sounded, shared those dreams with them. To his brothers, it felt like pride. To them, Joseph wasn't just a favorite anymore. He was becoming a threat. Their jealousy turned into anger, and their anger turned into hatred. One day, Joseph's brothers were far from home, tending their flocks. Jacob sent Joseph to check on them. As they saw him coming from a distance, wearing that coat they despised, something dark took over. They made a plan. At first, they wanted to kill him, but one of the brothers stepped in and convinced them not to go that far. Instead, they threw Joseph into a deep pit. Imagine Joseph in that moment, confused, scared, betrayed by his own family. But they didn't stop there. When a group of traveling merchants passed by, the brothers decided to sell Joseph as a slave. Then they took his coat, covered it in blood, and brought it back to their father, making him believe Joseph had been killed. Joseph was taken far away, to Egypt. Life in Egypt was anything but easy. Joseph was sold again, this time to a powerful man named Potiphar. But even in slavery, Joseph stood out. He worked hard, stayed faithful, and earned trust. Soon, he was put in charge of everything in his master's house. But just when things seemed to be getting better, everything changed again. Joseph was falsely accused of something he didn't do and thrown into prison. Once more, his life took a painful and unfair turn. Yet, even in prison, Joseph didn't give up. He remained faithful and continued to do what was right. While he was there, Joseph discovered something unique. He could interpret dreams. This gift would eventually change everything. One day, Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, had troubling dreams that no one could explain. Joseph was brought before him. With humility and confidence, Joseph explained the meaning of those dreams. Egypt would experience years of great abundance, followed by a severe famine. Then Joseph offered a plan: store food during the good years so people could survive the hard years ahead. Pharaoh was amazed. In a moment that changed Joseph's life forever, he placed him in charge of all Egypt, second only to himself. From a pit, to a prison, to a palace. Years later, the famine Joseph had warned about spread across the land. Even his own family was affected. His brothers traveled to Egypt to buy food. They stood before Joseph, but they didn't recognize him. Joseph, however, recognized them immediately. Imagine that moment. The very people who betrayed him, now standing in front of him, asking for help. Joseph had the power to take revenge. He could have punished them or turned them away, but instead, he chose something unexpected. He watched them carefully. He tested them. He listened. And over time, he saw something had changed. These were not the same men who had sold him years ago. Finally, Joseph revealed who he was. "I am your brother, Joseph. You can only imagine the shock, the fear, the silence that must have filled the room. His brothers were terrified, but Joseph didn't respond with anger. Instead, he said something powerful. What you meant for evil, God used for good. Joseph forgave them, not because what they did was right, but because he understood something deeper. Through all the pain, all the injustice, all the waiting, God had been working behind the scenes. Joseph's journey had brought him to a place where he could save lives, including the very family who had hurt him. He welcomed them, cared for them, and restored what had been broken. This story isn't just about Joseph, it's about all of us. It reminds us that even when life feels unfair, God is still at work. Even when people hurt us, we can choose forgiveness. And even in our darkest moments, there is still purpose. Joseph's story shows us that setbacks don't define us. How we respond does. So if you're in a season of waiting or dealing with pain you don't understand, remember Joseph. Your story isn't over yet. It is actually the beginning of something greater.